Hey, it's Kley. Hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to another video. This is going to be a kind of a review slash demonstration overview of the Source Audio Nemesis Delay. It's a unit that I've had for a little while now. Really enjoyed it, and just kind of wanted to give you guys some of a overview of my experience. If you're considering it, then hopefully this can be helpful. I'm going to have some sound clips. I'm going to have some of my own just verbal review and thoughts, and gonna try and kind of explicate those types of things, and hopefully give you guys a little bit of a understanding of where I'm coming from. So let's go ahead and just get started with you heard a little bit of a clip at the beginning. I just want to spend some time talking about the unit and some of the things that I really like most about it. So the first thing that I want to say about this unit is that I really love it. My user experience so far has been fantastic, and really can't say enough good things about it. To start off with, the thing that really impresses me the most is the sound quality of the delays. It's pretty top-notch. Now, to give you a little bit of context, I've used delays including the Eventide time factor. I've spent a little bit of time with some of the Strymon stuff, the El Capistan. I've owned an Axe-Fx for many years and used the delays in that unit extensively. I used an HD500 for a while that I used the delays in, and most recently I've been kind of using a Zoom G3X as well as a TC Electronic Alter Ego X4. So used a number of different delays, and I would say that the tone quality of the Nemesis is right at the top. Every delay has its own kind of different sound and feel, but the Nemesis in terms of tone quality is really right up there in terms of sound quality. Now, for me personally, I get the most mileage out of the digital delay, the tape delay, and the analog delay. Now, the Nemesis can do a lot more, but those are kind of my main bread and butter, and if those aren't really 10 out of 10, nothing else really matters beyond that to me. And I think that these three engines in this delay unit sound fantastic. One of the things that I like most about it is how each mode has some really nice tone shaping features. So you can get a really wide variety of sounds. You can get a digital delay, cut off some of that low end, and get a very percussive type sound where you're playing. The delay is almost the same level as the delay, and it's a very kind of percussive type experience. Really fun to play some of those dotted eighth rhythms. Conversely, you've got the tape delay, which gives in some of that that warble and that a lot of character and a lot of interesting modulation to give the kind of like a swirling type of effect. Just a really nice all-around delay. And then the analog delay is really impressed me. Finding a really good emulation of an analog delay is a really tough job to do, but this it's dark and chewy in just the right way, and the EQ just sits perfectly behind your main signal. It kind of creates almost like a pad or a wash underneath, which is really enjoyable to play behind. And overall, those three engines I think just sound really stellar. So I want to give you just kind of a brief tone clip of each of the delay engines. We're going to do digital, tape, and then analog, just to give you a little bit of a feel for each one and kind of how I would use them. Alright, so next I want to talk a little bit about ease of use. One of the things that I love about this delay unit is how it straddles the line between easy to use but also deep and complex in a really, really cool and interesting way. What I mean by that is if you just look at the delay unit on its face with the controls on board, you can really accomplish everything you would ever need to just using these controls. You've got time, feedback, mix. You know, those three basic controls are found on every delay pedal, and they go just as competently as with anything else. You know, your time ranges pretty from a very useful range. You know, I think it's about 0 to all the way up to like near 2 seconds. So plenty of time available. The feedback can go as well from, you know, short slapback all the way to getting into some self-oscillating feedback. And I really, really like how you can control that. And the mix as well, it goes at its minimum setting, it goes from no mix at all at up 50%. It's at unity with the dry signal, and then all the way to 100%. It actually cuts off the dry and is 100% wet. So a very, very useful set of features there. But then you also have 3 extra controls: the mod, the rate, and the intensity. With mod and rate, you really have a ton of control over the modulation. Being able to dial in the amount of modulation with the mod knob, and then the rate, the speed at which it goes, is really, really useful in getting just the right setting of modulation. And then the intensity knob is a very interesting multi-use control that more often than not functions like a tone control, but depending on the specific engine you're using, it could vary. And with these 3 controls, you do get a lot of depth and complexity and control over your tone. And so, you know, with just these 6 knobs, you really have a lot of range of what you can do. But then what's very interesting and intriguing is how much more, you know, so if you want to just use this as a very basic delay pedal, easy to use, not going to freak you out, it is perfectly capable in this type of a setup. But if you want to take it a step further and you really want to have some more micromanaging control over your delay tone, it actually has the Neuro App. And the Neuro App is a really interesting way to dive really, really deep into your tone. So for example, with the feedback knob on the Neuro App, you can actually generate how much self-oscillation the feedback knob will go into. You could actually set it underneath, so even if you go to very high feedback levels, you're never going to self-oscillate. Or you could set it at like 150% so that when you get up to about 75% to 80% of the feedback range, you're starting to really get into that self-oscillation. It just is a very powerful way to add a lot of depth. And actually, you can put some new engines in. They have these 12 basic ones on this middle wheel here, but you can actually put some different engines in there if you wish. You can do things like multi-tab delay. You can really fine-tune the EQ of the delay, including tightening both the low end and the high end. You know, tighten up that low end if you want a very percussive, bright delay repeat, or smooth out that top end if you want something that washes underneath your signal. Just a tremendous amount of control in the Neuro App. And so this delay pedal does a very interesting job of catering to both sides of the market, of people who like to have deep control and like to tweak. They can use the Neuro App. Or if you don't like that, you don't have to, and you can just use the onboard controls. Now, another comment I want to make about the app is I actually have kind of mixed feelings about it. Overall, it is very easy to use, but it's a little bit quirky. You actually have to use a very unique type of control that actually goes to your cell phone, the 3.5 millimeter output, and then it goes into right here at the input 2 control, and then you actually can send from your cell phone to the pedal. And I've got the app here. I have the Neuro App pulled up here, and you can see this Nemesis Delay. You can go into the sound editor. You know, you can have all tremendous control over all these parameters, and you can send this to the delay itself, which is really neat. But it's a little bit quirky. It's only a one-way signal, so if you change something on the delay, it will not transfer to the phone. It only goes from the phone to the delay. And there are some, sometimes you can get a little bit confused, like what exactly setting am I on, or did I set something weird on the phone and send it to the delay? Just sometimes it can be a little bit interesting. But on the flip side, it's kind of a nice in-between. It doesn't require to use a USB cable or run a bunch of drivers or anything like that. So it's kind of an interesting way to do this. And overall, I like it, but it's not perfect. And you can just see some of the different things that you can do here. Setting all these different types of parameters. You've got things like diffusion, distortion, feedback, this kind of, all these controls here. You can get some filtering going. You can control some of the tape modulation. You can get a tremolo modulation going. You can have a multi-tap. So you could have tap 1 set to quarter note, tap 2 set to a dotted eighth, and those are both coming off of the same delay line. This right here controls your self-oscillation. You've got some very interesting controls here about inverting or I/O options. Multi-feedback mode, if you have the different taps going, you can choose as to whether or not they feed back into one another or if they stay perfectly independent. Sum left right to mono is if you're not going to use stereo. You can actually change what the knobs do. So a lot of different control here, and it just makes for a pretty powerful experience when you're using the app to really dial in the tone that you want. Okay, and the next thing I want to talk about is presets. I love how this delay handles presets. I have used some different delays, and I've always kind of been one to use multiple different types of sounds, but I also don't like to use like the full-on preset mode where you use like hundreds of presets and you write out your entire set list and you have 3 or 4 presets per song. You just scroll up through those. I don't do that either. So for me, the Nemesis is a really intriguing option. So if you look down here, you can see there are 4 buttons. If I press this button, I can scroll between my 4 presets. Just a really handy and basic way to do it. Now, if the delay is off, I can also press and hold this button, and that will scroll through presets, which is actually not a terrible way to do it. Again, you're getting a lot of functionality here with a very small footprint. Or I actually also have up at the top of my pedal board, that right there, the T2 tap tempo. It's an external tap tempo switch. And if you watch, I actually have it set up so when I click on my tap tempo switch, it actually increments through those 4 presets. And it's just a very, very powerful and handy way of getting a lot of tones out of your delay. It's kind of similar to how the DD20 works. And what I really love about it is that you can also set it up to scroll between 8 presets if 4 isn't quite enough. Or if you are a MIDI guy and you want to go like really hog wild with presets, you could actually have up to 128. So basically, it is extremely versatile and powerful in how you want to route your presets. And it's one of the favorite things that I like about this. If you compare this to what I was running previously, an Alter Ego X4, that had 3 presets, but they were per switch, and it actually made the pedal a lot bigger. So here I have 4 presets, and I'm actually having less room on my pedal board. So I'm getting kind of more for less as far as how I see it. Following up on that, I love how small the enclosure is. You can see that the pedal board that I have this on really isn't such a big pedal board. It's just pretty small, and having the Nemesis on here, really lets me be powerful and flexible in my setup, and I don't have to, put a lot of space for it. It's compared to a lot of the other delays, things like the timeline or the time factor or the TC stuff. This is a real winner in terms of pedal board space. And if you do want to get a lot more functionality, you could even do a bigger foot switch. You could do a 2 or 3 button foot switch and get even more functionality out of it. And if you want to take up some more space and get more done, it just is very, very efficient. Now the next point that I want to bring up is what I'm just going to call inspiration. This is going to be something that's kind of subjective. It isn't really necessarily something about the pedal, objectively of what it can or can't do. It's just kind of how I have used it and kind of my reflections on it. I have found this pedal to be full of inspiration in terms of writing music and creating riffs and really just inspiring me to pick up and play. I think that is kind of an intangible quality about a pedal. You know, I talked a little bit before about how easy it is to use. I don't get dragged down in terms of tweaking, and if you want to set up some basic sounds, you can get them very quickly and just start playing. And I found that I really get lost in playing with this delay. You know, I will take a very simple riff, but just the way that the delay, just overtakes it, and the way the modulation is, and the way the EQ is, it just is very, very wonderful to play with. And I think that is really something to be to this pedal's credit, is how much it inspires me to just make music. I don't fight it. I don't feel like I have to work at it. It just comes very quickly. And that's just something that I really like about this pedal. Not every pedal that I've owned inspires me to make music like this. And I think that that's really a testament to something it's really working very, very well under the idea that it is immediately inspiring me to make music. All right, now in terms of fairness and in full disclosure, I have no affiliation with Source Audio. I think they have a tremendous company though, but I do want to talk about some things that I'm just going to call them cons or negatives, and then I'm going to try to fully explain them, and you can take that for what you will. The first thing I want to mention is kind of the way that it handles the pass-through signal. It does not do an analog dry-through. Now, true bypass and analog drive-through and all that stuff is kind of really buzzwordy and kind of, I think there's a lot going on there, and I don't want to get into all that. But I did have a little bit of trouble in terms of my bypass mode when I first got the pedal into my chain. Now, I want to start off by saying that I'm probably using this pedal in a little bit of a unique setup. I have an atomic amplifier on my pedal board that I mostly use for amp simulation, and then I'm running basically a line level signal towards the back end where I use delays and reverbs, and then run that to a DI box. Now, this type of setup is kind of weird and different compared to if you're running a bunch of pedals into the front of an amp. Basically, it's as if you would take the microphone output of a speaker cab and then feed that into the delay, is basically what I'm doing. And it caused me to have some weird, whenever I'd engage the delay, the volume would increase. Even when I would set the unity gain at 0 dB, I would just get some weird bypass stuff. So I actually had to go to buffered bypass, and in my such situation, that has worked perfectly. I have, very, very strong unity gain now that I've set that up. I don't have any volume increase. I don't have any tone suck or anything like that. But I guess compared to some of the other pedals on the market that do have the analog dry-through, that's just something to be aware of. I also think that it's, for some people, having an analog drive-through or a true bypass is kind of like a mental thing to know that their tone is getting straight to the amp as quickly and cleanly as possible. So even if there is just the slightest, maybe it's a placebo. I mean, sometimes that's real, and that if it is a placebo, it's not happening in real life, but it is happening in your mind, and that means that it's real to you, and that's fine. So it's just something that I wanted to mention, a feature about this pedal. When I first got it, I had to make some adjustments, but now I'm at a place where it's been really great, and I'm not struggling with that. But I do think that it's possible that maybe it wouldn't work for everyone in every type of setup. The next thing I want to mention is some of the implementation of some of the features is maybe a little bit not as easy as it could be. For example, the Neuro App, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. Some of those things can be pretty complex, and for one thing in particular that I ran into, again, this may be very specific to me and my uses, but I tend to use a dual delay a lot. I play a lot of praise and worship stuff, so having a dotted eighth note and a quarter note delay feeding into each other is really a sound that I use very, very frequently. And in this pedal, the dual delay thing is just kind of weird. They use what is called a tap setup, and as I understand, this is different than, like, when we usually talk about tap, we're talking about tap tempo, but basically it's if you think about and the way the analogy is, if you have a tree, and you can tap, you have the inside of the tree, the water's running in through the trunk, and where do you plug into the tree to get that out? Well, if you start at the top, maybe that's your quarter note, and then go a little closer and that's your dotted eighth, and you can kind of go down the tree, and you're tapping out of that single delay time at different rates. I apologize if this is confusing, because it is confusing to me. The way that they do the tap system, I think was not easy for me to understand. And actually, I've gotten to the point where the sound that I wanted to hear, the pedal actually can't quite do. Because what I'm used to hearing is 2 delays, right? So I have one delay that is a dotted eighth note, and I have another delay that is a quarter note. And it's like running 2 pedals in series into one another. So you have the dotted eighth that's running into the quarter note. So the dotted eighth delay is being repeated by the quarter note delay in the second delay pedal. So you have two signals in series with one another, kind of meshing in a very unique way, and it kind of creates like a digga, and the way that the repeats interact is something that I've kind of gotten really used to. Again, remember my background is I've really been a multi-effects user for a long time, with the Axe effects, the HD500, the Zoom G3, and I guess the Time Factor and the Alter Ego are not that way, but they do that as well, where you have 2 delays run in series with one another. Whereas the Nemesis really is one delay just being tapped at different intervals. So, when I first set it up, you actually would get the dotted eighth and the quarter note running completely independent of one another, just perfectly repeating at that subdivision. But then if you do the multi-tap on both, then you kind of get a situation where, yes, they feed into one another, but they're feeding into one another at the same time. So it's kind of like you're running into a dotted eighth, into a quarter, and then also into a quarter and into a dotted eighth, and they're intermixing, and it gets a little bit muddy. So I guess what I really want to say is that for my specific use with the dual delay and the dotted eighth, I found the Nemesis to be a little bit, I had to do a lot of research, I had to watch some videos, and it wasn't as clear or as easy to use for what I was trying to seek in my specific situation. Now, I have gotten to the point where I have a sound that I really like, and it's not like a deal breaker, I've just kind of adapted to it. And that's also, when I compare it with units like the Axe effects or the Time Factor, there was a significant learning curve with those units as well. So it's not fair, if you buy a Strymon Timeline, I'm sure there's going to be a learning curve just like there would be with the Nemesis to get it to work the way you want. But that isn't, it wasn't also as simple as maybe I wished that it could have been. And it also maybe doesn't have the type of setup that I was specifically looking for that very niche type of sound. So overall, I'm going to wrap up my thoughts here. I hope you enjoyed the sound clips. I will have more on my channel, and there are a lot more out there on the internet. I think that the delay sounds excellent. What I really wanted to convey here is some of my personal experiences in using it, some of the things that I've really loved about it, and also to give you some of the things that maybe weren't as fantastic that I've kind of had to work through, and so to give you an accurate understanding of what's going on. If you have questions, please leave them down below in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this, and I'd love to hear some feedback, so I'll see you guys again soon. Take care.